They say wars are loud. Explosions, speeches, the sound of boots and banners. But in the frozen silence of Siberia, a different kind of war was fought. One with no parades, no medals, and no headlines. A war that left no victory, only shadows. This is the story no one talks about, because it was never meant to be told. It began in a place most maps only hint at. A stretch of land so cold it cracks metal, so vast it could swallow a continent and still feel empty. Siberia. The end of the world, some called it, but for others, it was the perfect hiding place. In 2014, as the world's attention turned to Crimea, a quieter front emerged thousands of kilometers away, where satellite images began picking up strange heat signatures deep within the Siberian taiga. No one knew what they were. Not the analysts, not the journalists who tried to trace them. But those who lived nearby whispered about things that didn't belong. Unmarked convoys, silent aircraft, and men without insignia. It wasn't an invasion, it wasn't peacekeeping. It was something in between. A shadow war. To understand why it happened, you have to understand what Siberia is. Not just a region, but a secret in plain sight. It's where Russia's deepest scars and richest veins of power run together. Gas fields, nuclear silos, ghost cities, and prisons older than memory. A place where the state could bury anything. A man, a project, even a war. By 2016, reports began surfacing from scattered outposts. Engineers who vanished after discovering restricted construction zones. Miners who stumbled on tunnels that weren't on any blueprint. Villagers who said the forest had begun to move at night. When questioned, officials denied everything. The few journalists who asked too many questions found their credentials quietly revoked or their names erased from local archives. And yet, fragments leaked. Photos of military trains traveling under heavy snow at midnight. Intercepted radio chatter mentioning Zone 22. Documents stamped with the same word again and again. Omut. The Russian word for whirlpool. No one knew what Omut was. A base, a project, a myth. But those who studied the pattern noticed something unsettling. Wherever Omut appeared, people disappeared. I first heard about the Shadow War from a man named Sergei, a retired cartographer who used to map oil pipelines for the government. He told me he'd seen coordinates change overnight. Entire villages scrubbed from the database, their coordinates replaced by frozen lakes that never existed. He laughed when I asked why no one talked about it. Then he said something I'll never forget. Because here, silence is survival. Satellite data from the last decade shows something strange. Entire patches of forest in Yakutia and Irkutsk erased, pixelated, or blurred out on open maps. Officially, it's for environmental protection. Unofficially, some believe it's where battles were fought. Not with tanks and bullets, but with data, energy, and silence. An invisible conflict over control of the Arctic route, rare earth minerals, and the flow of information itself. A war fought with cyber sabotage, covert engineering, and psychological operations, hidden behind the coldest frontier on Earth. And it wasn't just Russia. Documents declassified by European intelligence agencies mention unidentified drone activity traced back to Western contractors, operating climate research missions in restricted Siberian airspace. In 2019, a cargo plane crashed near Norilsk. Officially, it was transporting industrial equipment. Unofficially, investigators found radiation shielding inside and fragments of something resembling autonomous drone cores. Whatever was happening out there, it was bigger than a border conflict. It was a testing ground. But here's what makes the Shadow War different. It wasn't just fought in the cold, it created more of it. Entire ecosystems disrupted by underground detonations, chemical runoff, and experimental drills. The permafrost, once frozen for millennia, began to melt faster than scientists could measure. And from beneath it, ancient things began to wake up. Bacteria, methane, and buried weapons from wars we'd already forgotten. In trying to control the land, they may have broken it. No one will ever publish casualty numbers because officially there was no war. No heroes, no graves, just people. Indigenous herders who lost their reindeer roots. Scientists forced to sign secrecy oaths. Families who watched their towns disappear into restricted zones. Their stories are fragments, scattered like the snow. And maybe that's how it's meant to be. A story erased before it could ever be written. Today, the shadow war in Siberia exists only in whispers, in corrupted files, in the empty coordinates of frozen satellite images. But the silence says enough. Because every system built on secrecy eventually turns its silence inward, until it starts erasing itself. So if no one talks about it, it's not because they forgot. It's because somewhere in the snow, something still listens. And maybe that's the real reason the war never ended.